Hello everyone and welcome back to another book review. Today I am going to be reviewing Naturalist by Edward Wilson, which is in a graphic adaptation by Jim Ottaviani and C.M Butzer. This is what the cover looks like, and as mentioned, this is a graphic adaptation of what I assume is the autobiography by Edward Wilson. So this was not something that I expected or anticipated to read. I saw it on the library shelf and was drawn by the very colorful cover. The cover really does stand out and pop even on a library shelf. So I decided to check it out of the library and read it, even though I really had too many books already checked out and at home to read. And I don't regret doing that. Going into this book, I had no clue who Edward Wilson was, so I did not know the person the book was about. I had no clue what to expect. It was just the colors and the book drew the book to me off the shelf, so I brought it home and read it. No background, no foreknowledge, nothing going into this book that could give me clues on what this was about, other than this was about some sort of naturalist. And I started reading and I really enjoyed it. So this follows the autobiographical tale, I guess you could say, of Edward Wilson, who was an entomologist who devoted his life to studying ants and has done quite a bit more. He actually passed away in 2021, according to Wikipedia. So this book talks about him as though he were still alive, and of course it's his autobiography, so it's written from the voice of Wilson, but he has since sadly passed away quite recently. And it is adapted in this graphic novel format, which is quite easy to read, and the colors and the scenes are really, really interesting. We follow Wilson from a very young age in this book, when he was a boy, when he was just getting interested in the world around him. We learn about an eye injury that he acquired at a very young age, which kind of changed what he might be capable of doing. Here is that eye injury that's occurring on this page. It's page 18 and 19 in the book. We learn about him doing his schooling, his time in the university system, and then when he graduates and he becomes a professor, his hunt for a tenured position in the university system, the research he does, as well as parts of his personal life, meeting his wife, getting to know her, getting married to her, his career as he studies ants, that was his specialty around the world, the discoveries that he makes, his interest in ants, and then we go into the part of his life where he wound up publishing a book which is still to this day quite controversial. He founded the field of sociobiology. He published a book, I believe by the same name, which is quite controversial. I actually had never heard of this field or book, but I can't say I'm super well versed in the field of biology in the sense of modern developments in the last 50, 60 years, so maybe that makes sense why I don't know it, but I was not familiar with this field or book, but it is still to this day quite controversial. You can look up more information about that online, but he does cover the controversy in this book. And then we see towards the later parts of his life, he becomes very interested in things like biodiversity and becoming an environmental activist to preserve as much of this diversity and the natural world that he studied throughout his life and his struggle to help preserve that for future generations so that we're not losing these priceless things which can never be replaced. So we do get a full span of his life. This isn't just focused on one research project or one span or one time frame in his life. It's focused on all of it, and it's in this graphic adaptation which makes it easier to read, in the sense that if you are maybe someone who doesn't read a lot or you don't want to spend a lot of time slogging through a thick autobiography, this keeps it colorful and interesting and really hits on the highlights with great art and great colors and just a great piece of work overall. So as mentioned, I didn't know anything about this naturalist, this entomologist going into this book, but I don't think that changed how much I enjoyed this book. I don't know if I would have liked it more if I knew more about it. Maybe if I was a huge fan of Wilson, I would like it more. But something that really pops out of nonfiction books and that I find you can tell is when the author has passion for what they're talking about. And that is very clear in this book because it's written from Wilson's voice, that first person perspective. You can tell Wilson really deeply cares about his work, his passions, his studies, and that comes through very clearly. You can tell when reading a nonfiction book when the author, or at least when I feel like the author is just writing a book because, I don't know, he needs to pay the mortgage this month, or it's something that could be interesting to write about, but that spark of passion isn't there, versus a book when that spark of passion is there. There was another book that I read or listened to the audiobook probably about 9 months ago at this point. The author It's the same author as Braiding Sweetgrass, and it was about moss. I'm completely drawing a blank on the title, but I remember the book vividly because the author had such a passion about something that I had never really spent a lot of time thinking about, moss. And the author's passion really came through on the page. And when the author has this passion for the topic, it flows through to the reader, and I feel like the reader becomes also passionate about this topic, even if they personally didn't have any passion about the topic beforehand. In the case of that book, mosses. I probably wasn't going to get all excited about mosses, but the author's personal interest and personal passion really was clearly conveyed through the writing, and therefore made me interested in the topic as well. In Naturalist, I mean, how often have I thought about ants? About my extent of thinking about ants is when I get bit by one outside, or when I find one in my kitchen and I need to remove them from my kitchen because I don't want them in my house. I don't think I've ever thought about ants beyond that, but I was made passionate, not necessarily about ants. I'm not going to go out and get every book on ants my library has, but through the course of this book, or for the duration of this book, I was made interested in ants by the author, Wilson's, interest in ants. You can see his passion about a topic that maybe a lot of other people aren't passionate about. And that's what I really respect and appreciate. And that's what I think drew me as a reader in. I may not have a personal interest in ants, but I can clearly see and respect the author's passion about ants, and that passion about ants, or the passion about whatever topic is being discussed with passion in a book, comes off the page and draws the reader in. And that's something that can't be taught necessarily. I don't think you can teach things like good writing styles, and there can be a role for editing, but that passion I feel like has to come from the author, and that has to be a genuine passion. And this is a book where you can see the genuine passion from the author, which in this case is Wilson. Even though it was adapted by other people, the words still appear to be his, and his passion is clearly conveyed throughout all of that. And through this adaptation, which I assume is based on the original autobiographical work by Edward Wilson, the adapters, this Ottaviani and Butzer, the names will be in the description below so you can see them in case I am mispronouncing them, didn't dilute, or in the process of adapting it to a graphic format, didn't lose any of that spark that was in the book, which I really appreciate. And I feel like that's also a delicate balance that they probably had to work with, condensing it, adding this artistic style to it, while also not losing the passion and the spark that made the book interesting. You may not think that you have any interest in ants, but I think a lot more people would be interested in this book than may realize it. I think there was something about reading an autobiographical account of someone who has devoted their life to a topic and has a real passion for this topic that may be interesting to a wide variety of people. I wound up enjoying this book a lot more than I expected I would, and I think a lot of other people would too. So if you are looking for some sort of biography about someone who interacted with the natural world, I would highly highly suggest that you consider the book Naturalist by Edward O. Wilson, because I had a great time reading this book, and it was one that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did not expect to not enjoy it, but didn't expect for it to be as good as it was. And I think you may enjoy it too if anything that I've said sounds interesting to you. If you've read Naturalist or any book like it and you would like to have your thoughts on it read by me, or if you would like to suggest a book that you think I would enjoy reading having read Naturalist, please leave all of that in the comment section below. I love to receive it. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.